Greetings, salutations, and welcome to Sportslook, the sports television program for the high plains of West Texas and eastern New Mexico. I'm your host, Doc Elder, and because a couple of weeks ago we had to do that whole spring forward thing, today we're going to fall back, as in we're going to have two coaches from the fall back. Specifically, Abby Barnum from Greyhound women's soccer and Ty Hyatt from football. I'll finish up with an overtime, but as always, I'll start out with an Eastern recap. Greyhound baseball and Greyhound softball had similar experiences last weekend. They played 4 games from Friday to Sunday. Greyhound softball won 1 game. Greyhound baseball won 1 game. Both teams will be in action at home this coming weekend. Well, that has been your Eastern recap. So what we'll do is we'll clear the set and I'll bring in my first guest, Abby Barnum from Greyhound women's soccer, right now. Welcome back to Sportslook, and a privilege to bring back to the set of Sportslook the head coach of Greyhound women's soccer, Abby Barnum. And Coach, we have to put the heavy emphasis on women's soccer because now there's a male soccer counterpart.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me back.
It's a pleasure. And Coach, we will point out that Greyhound men's soccer, after a hiatus, back on the field, literally and figuratively. And I'm sure you don't mind sharing the field with them.
No, not at all. We're happy to have it back. It's a good thing to have both sports back, and it'll only help us in the long run. And, Brandon's a great coach that they brought in, and he's going to do a great job.
And I would think that it would actually be beneficial recruiting because usually, unless it's a family of all guys, if there's a guy soccer player in the family, probably a female soccer player, and having the word out about an Eastern men's program means, oh, they're going to find out there's an Eastern women's program as well.
It really does. And you'd be surprised how many recruits brought that up in the recruiting process of why is there no longer men's soccer? And so it makes a huge difference to be able to say, hey, we have it back. And they're excited about that. And they want to support men's soccer and vice versa. We want men's soccer at our games too. And it's just makes soccer more exciting.
Coach, you talked about the fact that Greyhound men's soccer is coming back, but they were on hiatus. I mean, there was not officially a men's soccer program. You were officially a program, but you didn't get to play last year.
It was tough. We were the only program within the conference that didn't get to play last spring, and it definitely showed for us a little bit on the field. And it only means we're going to be better next year. It's not an excuse anymore. No one can have COVID as their excuse going forward, but it was a good learning moment for us, and it gave us a better appreciation, in my opinion, of we're grateful that we get to play, we're grateful for the game, and grateful for opportunities.
And for people that may only be casual observers of the world of sports, they may not get it that if you're not competing, it's going to hurt you a whole bunch of ways.
That's very true. I mean, my first semester here, and right after I was hired, my initial time with the girls was all virtual. We were doing virtual workouts. And then we got a little bit of time together last spring, but that was it. There was no competition. There was no, for a while, there was not even any contact. It was just playing in pods spaced out from each other. So it's difficult to create game-like experiences in an environment where you can't play the game.
Well, when we actually did get to see your product in the fall of 2021, I was extremely impressed with how good you were defensively. And was that just the fact that you had a good defensive scheme, or was it that you had exceptionally good defenders, or was it a combination of both?
We didn't go into any of our games wanting to be more defensive. We wanted to score goals. We wanted to create opportunities going forward. Just didn't work out that way. We had a great goalkeeper in goal for us. She did an amazing job, and she, saved our butts plenty of times, but we had a great back line as well that was able to help us out defensively. But when, you're not getting as many opportunities to go forward and to put the ball in the back of the net, you have to be good defensively. So we worked a lot on that and defending together and trying to prevent goals from going in.
Soccer is an intuitive sport. It's an instinctive sport. It's an individual sport. There are a lot of eyes in there, the big eyes. But it's also, to a certain extent, I would imagine, kind of predictable. And so, how much scouting went into your preparation for Lone Star Conference matches?
So we watch not only ourselves with them, but we watch everyone we're going to play. And so, back when the conference before it merged, you would play teams twice in the conference when it hadn't merged with the Heartland just yet. And so it was a little bit easier to prep for the second game against them because you knew what you were getting. And that's not the option anymore. And so teams have been able to change up how they're going to play depending on who they play. And it's, provided options or at least opportunities for us to change how we're going to play or at least prepare more for how we're going to play before going into each game. And so we watch as much as we can, but I don't like to solely focus on what they're going to do. I want us to play our game and make them play us how we want to play, not adapt completely to what they're doing. So we want to control the game and not allow them to. But we like to be as prepared as we can.
In terms of a film session, are you the sole proprietor or are you the person who screens it and comes up with okay, this is what we're going to take away? Or do you have somebody help you analyze film?
Nope, it's been me for the most part. There's been occasional times where I've had the girls come in and pull clips, and it's either a position you're in or a position that you typically play if you're not on the field. And let's talk about questions you have, maybe errors that were made, or even productive moments of the game. And how can we recreate that or fix that problem? That way they're taking accountability for themselves on the field too. But also, I remember as a player, film sessions could get a little boring, especially if I was a freshman not on the field. And so this way it keeps them interactive and engaged. So they're taking away from it and not just sitting and watching for an hour. So I like to pull clips rather than us just watch the game without anything going on.
I started college way back in the day with kind of two options. One was to become an educator, and one was to become a lawyer. I pretty quickly decided I didn't want to go lawyer, but I did take one class, and they teach you in law school never ask a question that you aren't prepared for the answer to. And so when you ask your kids, if you show them a clip and say, "Tell me what you see," how often did they tell you what you want them to say? And how often do they come up with something like, where did that come from?
It's a funny question because it's happened this whole past week. That's been a recent thing that was going on. So we get about half and half. We're still working on some of our younger ones' IQs. They're still learning their soccer and learning the college game more importantly. And so sometimes I can get it out of them exactly what I'm looking for, but often there's times that they bring up a point that maybe I wasn't going where was I wasn't trying to find that point, but they're able to point it out and then we can talk about that as well. So there's some that have caught on pretty quick and can point out things that maybe I didn't see initially either. And so for the most part, they're pretty smart with that, but there's times that two people will have the exact opposite idea of the same thing. And so we'll at least try to get on the same grounds and the same page of everything so we can play the same.
There are some programs where you don't have a single senior. I mean, there are some basketball teams that are still alive, still on the men's side of the bracket and the women's side of the bracket where they don't have many seniors. There are some programs where they're going to lose a ton. Where does Greyhound women's soccer fall? How many kids did you lose? How many kids you bringing back?
Yeah, so we had um, interesting kind of number because of COVID. Everyone's in that same spot. So we had a couple that left at semester because their eligibility was up. They had actually graduated last spring and decided to play their COVID year. So they started a second degree and they ended up not finishing their second degree and just graduated and moved on. And then we'll have a couple more. We'll have three more this spring that will graduate in May. And then the rest of them are true seniors going into their senior class. But again, they all still have a senior year this upcoming year. So 23 will be a little more interesting than this past year. This past year, we kind of knew who we were losing and how many I needed to bring in. I needed to bring in about 5 to 6 players to make up for what we've lost. But the next year will be a little different of how many we need to replace.
So, with the limited number of individuals that you are going to bring in, what Do you go just after the best player and it's like we can fit them in, or are you specifically targeting like a position that you really need?
A little bit of both. So for us, we lost a few key players that we needed to replace that specific position with a player that could come in right away and make a difference, not necessarily a developmental player. However, there are some where if they're going to contribute in whatever way into our program and they want to be at Eastern and they're going to be a good teammate and coachable and determined to help make this program better, then we want those types of players here. And so it's a little bit of both. I don't mind a couple developmental players, especially if they're willing to put in the work, but we also want as talented players we can get.
So I would imagine, and I think from what you just said, I kind of know the answer, but I'll explicitly state the question. In a perfect world, when you recruit, are you going after junior college transfers that can come in immediately, know the college game, and have an immediate impact? Or are you kind of taking the long view and saying, no, I want to bring in kids, maybe redshirt them and have them for 4 years?
It's I'm right in the middle. I like both. There's even 4-year transfers, they know what they're already looking for. Whereas, high school, PSAs are looking for maybe the pretty picture of things, or maybe they don't know exactly what they want. And that's why we have the transfer portal, and that's why there's, hundreds and hundreds of kids on the portal. And so I like a transfer student athlete because they know exactly what questions to ask in the recruiting process. They know what they're looking for, and they know how they can be productive in whatever environment they're choosing because they've experienced it before. But at the same time, a high school athlete, you're getting for 4 years that you can take the full 4 years and to develop them into what you're looking for and into this program. And they're already getting the culture that we want and how they can contribute to it. So just a good mixture of both. At the end of the day, it's whoever's going to come in and contribute to our program for the better, obviously, and also bring in new positive things and just help out altogether.
So, in what ways is your team going to be a version of this year's team, only better doing those things? And in what ways are you kind of saying, okay, let's change the approach?
Sure. I think what really held us back in the fall was the mental aspect of the game. It's not easy to lose games. And there was a mental, I think, blockage at times. And it was not for a lack of talent. These are very talented individuals. And a lot of them are going to help us out this fall and bring in that same talent. And now the biggest piece that we have to change is our team chemistry on the field, just getting on the same page and being able to win games by doing so. And this spring has been a huge, 180 in their mental aspect, in their team chemistry aspect, and even just their on the field communication has been complete difference. And that's been a big relief for me because it just shows that this fall is going to be even better.
Well, coach, we wish you the very best of luck. Can't wait until we see you in action next fall.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, that is going to wrap up our first interview segment. So, what we'll do is we'll clear the set and we'll bring in Ty Hyatt from Greyhound Football right now. Welcome back to Sportslook, and a privilege to bring back to Sportslook the head coach of Greyhound Football, Ty Hyatt. And, Coach, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Doc.
Well, Coach, obviously big news for you after the end of the football season. You got the ultimate compliment from the athletic department. Dr. Weir offered you a multi-year deal, and that doesn't happen very often. So it really says that we've got confidence you're the guy to move us forward.
Yeah, no, extremely grateful to President Caldwell, extremely grateful to Coach Weir. People have been just so tremendous in the community, obviously here on campus. And I think it just says a lot to, to our coaching staff, to the players in our program, just where we're going, the work that we have to do. We were just talking beforehand about spring football coming up and all those things, but I just think it's a compliment to those people that work this fall and under some different circumstances, and really looking forward to being able to move forward and and get ready for this upcoming season.
Well, speaking of Dr. Caldwell, obviously, I speak for many, many, many people at the university that we do not begrudge her the fact that she was going to retire, but we're kind of sorry she did because I think she was a great president.
Oh, I thought that Dr. Caldwell, from the moment that I was on campus to interview, which was almost close to a year ago this time, just such a tremendous person. You can tell that she's a tremendous leader. Really cares about people and individuals and people's families, and she's always the first one to check in to see how you're doing and how the season was going and how the off season's going. So I know that she's going to be greatly missed in the community and especially on campus. And it's pretty amazing for her for 40 plus years to be somewhere, to be able to work in such tremendous strides, and for her to move up the ladder. I just think says a lot about people in a day and age where there's a lot of administrators and coaches and people that are moving to different companies and those things. But for her to do that for 40 plus years, I think is a tremendous testament to her, her being resilient, just how tough she is. And I know that she's going to be greatly missed here at Eastern.
Well, on the opposite side of the spectrum, Paul Weir just finishing up like not quite a year as the athletic director. And obviously, anytime you come into a new situation and you want to make changes, you're going to get a little bit of resistance. But I think by and large, people recognize he's got a vision. He wants us to be able to be competitive in every sport across the board. And I would imagine you've got a pretty good working relationship with him.
Yeah, tremendous. With Coach Weir, he's been a coach for 20 plus years. And with him stepping in as an administrator, I think it just really says something as, every single day as a head coach, people really don't know the struggles that you're in unless you're a head coach, the day in, the day out of the different things that you have to handle and the different things you have to juggle. And with Coach Weir, he's coming in as an athletic director that's been in that chair. He's been there and he understands exactly what you're dealing with day in, day out, from, your team to potentially recruiting to the players on the team to their parents on the team. I really believe that he is someone that when you walk in the door, he's someone that you want to do your very best for. And I think that he really brings that out in all of us as coaches. I think back to the first time that he was here on campus when we knew that he was going to be athletic director, and we went into Greyhound Arena and we had our meeting, and the very first thing that he was talking about was enrollment. The very first thing he was talking about is that in order for Eastern to do great things is that we have to have great enrollment. And he said, and as coaches, we have a direct influence on enrollment, not only within our teams, but retaining the members of our teams. And then when we're out on the road recruiting, being able to broadcast and market and be able to promote Eastern at a high level. And again, I just think all of our coaches appreciated that, because here we have this athletic director who was just a coach at the Division I level and a very good coach, you might add. But for him to come in and understand that vision of the things that we need to do as coaches, and he came in and he said, "Hey, Ty, no pressure. We need to be good at football." But I appreciated that. I appreciate the fact that he challenges us as coaches, and he's doing everything in his power to be able to make Eastern the best that it can be. And I think for being an athletic director for 9 months or whatever it is, I think that he's done a tremendous job. And I can tell you that as a football coach here, and I think I would speak for all of our coaches here at Eastern, it's someone when you wake up in the morning, you're excited to go to work because you know that you're working with someone who shares the same vision, who wants to win.
Well, Coach, speaking of pressure, it's said in this part of the world that there are two seasons. There's football season, and then there's spring football season.
That's
And
right.
so you're definitely the flagship program.
We are, no, and I can tell you that that's something that we really embrace in our program. That's something that we really embrace with our coaching staff. We feel very, very fortunate with the things that we have with our beautiful stadium and the support that we get not only here in Portales but in Clovis and just the eastern region here of the state and in West Texas. There's a lot of people that really care about Greyhound football, and I can tell you that's why we're so excited for spring football, because we actually start practice on Wednesday. And I can tell you that with COVID, it's kind of crazy to think about. We've been talking as coaches. You think back to the 19 season when 8-4 and won a bowl game, went into that spring season, and we're not able to have spring practices because COVID hit. And so you think about missing out on that spring season Last year was a lost opportunity with spring season with the coaching change. And so, really, this is going to be the first time in over 2 years that Greyhound football has actually had a full spring practice. And we're getting pretty excited to actually be able to out and get that done.
And I would presume that we're going to build up to an inter squad scrimmage. Do you have a specific date set yet?
We do. So that'll be Friday, April 29th, and that'll be at 6 p.m. That'll be here in Greyhound Stadium. I'll tell you the other thing that we're going to do is less than 2 weeks is that we're actually going to have one of our practices in Clovis at the high school. We're going to do it Saturday, April 9th. We're going to do it that morning, just for a way for people to come out and see the Greyhounds in action and interact with the team and those things. But yeah, the inter squad scrimmage will be Friday, April 29th. It'll be a spring game, but there will be some modifications just because typically in the spring you're a little bit lower numbers and those type things. But I can tell you that our guys are getting pretty excited. You know, they've been hearing me bark at them in the weight room with Coach Moore and early morning lifts and runs. And you know, the day that we left for spring break that Friday, there was about 2 inches of snow on the ground, and our guys were outside and just going and working in the snow. So I think that they're getting pretty excited to not be doing those workouts and actually start to get playing some football.
You mentioned Coach Moore, and that's one of a couple of significant changes from the fall. You've got a new strength coach and you've got a new defensive coordinator.
We do. So our new strength coach, Tommy Moore. You know, Tommy, I have a lot of respect for Coach Moore. He's a veteran for the Army. He's been in a couple different programs. The latest program that he was at University of Texas. And so for us to be able to get him in January, I feel like has been a tremendous asset, not only to football but really athletics. Because when you look at a strength coach, and he has his staff, but really that strength coach touches every single student athlete in the department. So for him to be able to be here and be able to make an impact on so many different student athletes has been tremendous. I know it has been specifically in football. And then we just did hire a new defensive coordinator, Jamie Bish. His wife Tara is actually from this area. You know, it was funny that when we had the opening, you know, Coach Bish had actually reached out and he said, "Hey, by the way, you know, I used to coach at Nimi, and also my wife Tara is from this area as well." And so we're very excited to get them here. He's coming from Bemidji State, which, you know, Bemidji just had their best season in school history, won a playoff game for the first time in school history. So I can tell you, we're very excited to have him here because we know that in order to play for a conference championship, we have to be great on defense. You have to be able to stop people in the Lone Star Conference, and I feel very good about Coach Bish and the defensive staff. And again, excited to see them work this spring.
Well, you've got a couple of new faces on the coaching level, but you've also got some new faces in terms of personnel. And last time we were actually in the studio, you and I were doing media day, and sounded like you had some pretty significant recruits that you're bringing in.
We did, and that was, you know, thinking back to that, that was about 7 weeks ago, and you know, recruiting never stops, and we feel like we've added some tremendous pieces since then, as far as some transfers from four-year schools and some junior college players, and I can tell you that's something that is going to continue throughout the coming months and all the way leading up to fall camp. I just think that's something that is with coaches we always talk about that you can be the best coach that you want to be. Um, but typically the best coaches have the best players. So,
Works out that way,
you know,
yeah.
typically that's how it works. And so what we're trying to do is just make sure, you know, with us, like, yeah, we're trying to get the best players, but we're trying to get the best players that are the right fit here at Eastern New Mexico. And for us, I can tell you that those are players that love football, obviously have the right talent level to be able to play at a high level in this conference, but that are players that are going to put the team first. And I think that our coaching staff did a tremendous job of finding those young men and then being able to, as we go through the process of adding a few more pieces to the puzzle, those are the criteria that we're looking for. And I can tell you that I'm very excited about some of the young men we are bringing in.
Well, obviously, every position has a different skill set, and the physical shape of a player is going to vary depending on where they play. But if you had to say there was one characteristic that every recruit, whether they're coming in from high school or whether they're a transfer from a four-year school, they have in common, what is every Greyhound football player going to have as a common attribute?
Well, I'll give you two. I think one's physical and one is more of a mindset. Is that every single recruit that we bring in has to love the game of football. There's times where we ask them to do things that they're going to question. There's times where we're going to have them do some drills or assignments or those things that are really going to tell us, do you love football? Do you really love what you're doing? Because if you do, then you're going to be the perfect fit. I think the other attribute, if we're talking physically, has been the ability to be able to change direction. At the end of the day, like you look at the best athletes, and I don't care what sport it is, whether it's football, volleyball, soccer, baseball, any of those, you have to be able to change direction. And I feel like our coaching staff did a great job of bringing in those type of kids that can change direction, especially when you talk about our conference, the Lone Star Conference. There's kids that can run. So in order to be able to combat that, we have to have kids that can run. And again, like I said, I think our coaches have done a really good job of identifying those type of players and being able to get them here to Portales.
And coach, speaking of that, that's a good place for us to end. And we'll say that speaking of changing directions, I'm sure we're changing direction. And next year, we're going to see positive side victories. And we're going to see another bowl game in the not too distant future.
We're working at it.
All right. Well, that is going to wrap up our last interview segment. So what we'll do is we'll clear the set and I will finish up with an overtime right now. On Saturday, history will be made in the Division I men's basketball tournament when the University of North Carolina plays Duke University. First time they've ever played in the Final Four? Well, yeah, but even more so, it's the first time those two teams have ever played each other in the postseason. And you're saying, how can that be possible with all the times that UNC has gone to the tournament, all the times that Duke has gone to the tournament? They've never played each other? No, they haven't. So something's going to give on Saturday. Either Hubert Davis, in his first year as the head coach of the University of North Carolina, is going to win, or Mike Krzyzewski, in his last year as the head coach of the Duke Blue Devils, is going to win. I guess we'll find out. Well, that has been an overtime, and that has been an episode of Sportslook. I would like to thank my guests, Abby Barnum from Greyhound Women's Soccer, Ty Hyatt from Greyhound Football. I had two floor directors. I had Aiden and I had John. So for those aforementioned people, this is Doc Elder saying, so long.